I'm Alicia.
And I'm Maddie.
And welcome to the Fangirl Diaries, a podcast where we talk about our obsessions,
Reminisce about our teen icons,
and explore the books, movies, and shows that made us the incredibly nerdy 30-somethings that we now are. Good evening, Maddie.
Hey, Alicia, how are you doing?
We are absolutely jumping headfirst into, probably the most important podcast topic maybe ever, and just reflected on the fact that we've had no pre-chats, we have no set way to go about this,
no preparation.
No preparation, and I'm astonished at our lack of pre-discussion given the weight of this topic today.
But we don't need it. This is something that has been a part of our lives for basically the whole of our lives, since we were children, and we don't need any preparation.
So we're doing Harry Potter, and it's a bit like doing a podcast called Who We Are. How I feel about
this. True.
Everything. I'm sorry, but the premise of this entire podcast concept, which is about all the nerdy, fantasy, obsessive-y stuff that we are into, do you think we would be those people if Harry Potter didn't exist?
That is a deep question that I'm not sure I have ever truly thought about, but you're probably right. It's certainly the beginning, if not almost the beginning of that genre for us. And not just the genre of fantasy, but like you said, the ability to have and feel a deep obsession for a franchise, for a world, for characters. Yeah, you're right. It started with Harry Potter, didn't it?
Yeah, it was the first time for me that those two things really coalesced, because I can identify earlier childhood obsessions. You had to listen to them on repeat in my dad's recent wedding speech for me. Was particularly themed. And I knew, every birthday of every Spice Girl when I was 6. But this was the combination of something that was literature, fantasy, multi-year, in an academic setting, and had all the framework of obsession, because you had to queue up for the book each year. You had to be at the bookstore at 9 a.m. to get your copy. And then the full franchise came out. And I was just on this gravy train for probably a decade and a half.
For sure. I mean, I was looking at the years to try and put this into context. I think we were just the exact perfect age. And I've always said this, the reason that it hit us so perfectly was we were the exact perfect age as especially the last books were coming out. So the first book came out in 1997. We would have only been 6 at that point. But the last book came out in 2007. So we were 16. And so the last few books, kind of 4, 5, 6, 7, were coming out at almost exactly the same age we were as the characters. And it would just kind of, it became this thing every year or every couple of years later on that just lived with us and grew up with us. And we're mostly going to be talking today about the first 3 books where the children are more kids, but we grew up as Harry and Ron and Hermione grew up each year, and it just perfectly fitted into our childhood.
I don't know what this says about my life, but I think it might on reflection be the happiest experience of my entire life.
Oh, that's nice.
Somehow the whole experience of just living alongside, as you said, Harry Potter and its release, and because we were the same age, it felt like looking forward to looking into a parallel life of yours, almost your, this is awful, but almost your preferred life, because while, I wasn't being chased by Voldemort and there wasn't death and torture and destruction in my everyday, there was something desirable about being in a school where they could do spells and have a cat, and it was boarding school and they had like magical powers and they played with broomsticks. And I thought, oh, I wish I was there.
I think that is the key, isn't it? I think everyone kind of tries to boil down like why did the success of Harry Potter happen? Why was it these books? Why was it this particular set of characters, these ideas that really just became a phenomenon beyond any other children's series of the last, gosh, 30 years at this point. Um, and it was that kind of wish fulfillment piece of just wanting to be a part of it. Nobody was reading it and being like kind of separate from it. They felt they were at Hogwarts. They were one of the students and they wanted to be in that world. And I think that's actually a theme that we see in quite a lot of our obsessions, is that the reason we're obsessed is because we wish we were part of it. And this is
Definitely.
like the ultimate version of that.
Definitely. And the conditioning version of it, because yeah, like we were saying, this is the earliest one. This was the formative one. This once we had taken that step into envisaging ourselves in a magical realm where people have powers and a specific group of friends, and maybe there's an academic setting, then it was so easy for us to lap up all the other things. Please,
Yeah, for sure.
full podcast list for details.
Okay, before we jump into our kind of main first question, which will be how did we first encounter Harry Potter? I do want to just quickly address the J.K. Rowling of it all and acknowledge that she's gone down a slightly weird tangent in the last few years, and we're going to be sticking here specifically to talking about the books and the content of the books and everything that we loved about the world that was created, and steering a little bit away from any controversy about her, and I'm not trying to wade into that conversation.
Yeah,
It's something. It's not.
it's not what we're here for.
It's not what we're here for right now, and I know it's a difficult conversation for people. So yeah, we are sticking to the books and not the author right now.
Exactly. We're talking about the art and its content, not its creator.
Yeah. So, Alicia, do you remember how you first found Harry Potter?
Vividly.
Yeah.
It was year 4 at primary school. So you're quite right. That's the year where people turn sort of 7. I think I was 7. And I was at the local state primary school, and I look back at the job of those teachers and think, wow, that was hard. Like, this was classroom control. There were 32 of us in the class, and this way predates technology. Like, I remember being excited when the school got a whiteboard,
Mm.
interactive whiteboard, just a whiteboard. You had
Yeah,
that.
rather than a blackboard.
I know. This feels like I'm talking about like the Stone Ages. But it was incredibly difficult. And I was aware of this at the time. It felt hard being at school because you were only half learning things, and a lot of the time it was just trying to keep children quiet. But the relevance of that is we started to have a sort of Friday last thing story time. And one day, Miss Ray, our year 4 teacher, brought in this book, Harry Potter. And she started to read it to the class, and everyone just shut up. Everyone, all 32 of us, we just sat on the floor. And such was the power of this book that I remember it becoming a thing that we did not just then every Friday, but we started to read almost 2 chapters like every day. Like the school day
Mm.
would end, and it was like the cacophony was over, and people just sat. And I remember thinking, I don't want the bell to ring. This needs to go on. Like, I need to come immediately back to school tomorrow, because what is going to happen? And who is Nicholas Flamel? But it was just like a transformative experience. I'd never seen 32 7 year olds sit so quietly ever. And
Yeah.
and then the second one came out. The school got 2 copies of it for the library, and you just couldn't get hold of it. You just couldn't, like, everyone had taken it home on day 1. And I think mum went and got me it from like W.H. Smith's or something. But yeah, it was right from Philosopher's Stone. I remember thinking, this is some kind of like drug.
That's so nice. Yeah, we didn't ever get to read it in school, but what I remember was one other girl in the class reading maybe the first one and maybe even the second one as well. And it kind of like almost slipping around the class as this like, oh, that's interesting. And I remember because I loved to read as a kid, I was basically constantly reading in a way that I miss now. I just don't do, and it's quite sad. But as a kid growing up, I just was, at breakfast I was reading, I was trying to like leave the dinner table early so I could go do more reading. And this was one of those books that as soon as I picked up that someone else was reading, it was like, I have to have that. And yeah, I think I probably read the first two together. They were probably already both out. And then, as you say, it just became this addiction. I think at that time, though, it was interesting because there were other books that it was kind of a contemporary to. It became this thing that was bigger than anything else. But at the beginning, it did have like other parallels. Like I always remember, do you remember like the worst witch books that were
I was
like,
literally gonna say Mildred.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And there were other kind of similar vibe of children's books, slightly magical, a little bit Roald Dahl, obviously,
Mhm.
but those are obviously older. But that era, that 90s era, did have a lot of really good children's literature. And I feel like the first three books fitted into that pattern. They were just like a really excellent version of that kind of genre. And then it was kind of post book three and onwards where it just became something else. It became bigger than just a set of children's books.
Yeah. Although even in those early books, when I think like, why is this at a different level than like the worst one?
Yeah.
Um, just the depth and detail of the world and the concept, even from those early books. Like you and I were laughing about something the other day, and I said I know nothing about economics apart from like, how many nuts are in a sickle. Like,
Yeah.
that's all I know. I'm full
Yeah.
of that useless trivia. But these books contain that kind of trivia. You were able to understand the depth of this. People still know like the first year Hogwarts book list.
Yeah. And like
The
the
parameters.
school mottos and songs and stuff. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or can
Yeah.
name various Bertie Bott's every flavored beans. Like,
Yeah.
I just think the depth of or like, yeah, the depth of the world, the layers of the tapestry, whatever metaphor we want to use, Harry Potter was just so in a league of its own. Um, that the
Which
kind
is
of
interesting because you sometimes get criticisms of Harry Potter more recently, or like as the later books went out and as we all grew up, that the world building wasn't as consistent and as deep as it needed to be. And I think that's because people were then started comparing it to like high fantasy, kind of like, the kinds of books that we read now and forgetting that they were children's books. People will be like, why does everyone work for the Ministry of Magic? There's no jobs in this economy. It doesn't make any sense. There's only like 20 people in a year group, and that's meant to be the whole of the wizarding world. That doesn't make any sense. People have all these like, because they then got taken out of the context of being children's books, a lot of people, yeah, they forget that actually for what they were at the beginning, they were that much richer, bigger world than we'd ever experienced before. And yeah, it's not fair to compare them to something where, like, I don't know, Tolkien spent his whole life creating a literal history of the universe and whatever. It's not the same thing, and it was never meant to be the same thing.
no, and the imaginative scope is so perfectly aligned to the like breadth of a child's vision and understanding of a world at that stage. Like
Yeah.
when you're the correct reading age for Harry Potter, you don't understand like what the scope of adult careers are. Like I 100% swallowed that everybody worked for the Ministry of Magic. Like
Yeah.
I just like you know what your own like mummies and daddies do, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And it never struck me as um overly simplistic because when you're reading Harry Potter, the world is still relatively simplistic. So it mirrors
Mhm.
that. Otherwise, I feel like it would have lost the interest of the very audience it was trying to keep. Like, I'm glad there wasn't complex histories. Like, something so good about Harry Potter, particularly the first, well, actually all of them, just whenever I go back and read them, which is a lot. They're very dialogue driven. Like,
Mm.
even for a book that has a lot of complex narrative, a lot of exposition, every page has got like Ron and Harry having a zippy conversation, or there's quite a lot of constant action and constant dialogue that makes it feel pacey and engaging and child friendly. And yeah, I didn't mind that there wasn't like super, super, super complex world building because it
Yeah.
felt complex. It felt rich as a child.
And the thing that really works about that when you talk about dialogue, it makes me immediately think about the other thing, other than the world building that really hooked people in and hooked us in when we were kids, which is the characters and the characters of the trio, plus probably Draco and a few others in the first few books. They are so they're almost like recognizable school characters that they're both instantly recognizable as like types of kids that you would have known, but also like likable, and you just wanted to be a part of the gang. Like you wanted to be one of them or one of a part of that group in some way, which again is another thing that we just like, yeah, need in our obsessions.
You say that, but I have always thought it's lucky that the Harry Potter books are focalized through Harry, because imagine that you were just another kid at Hogwarts. From the outside, Harry is actually really dull. He's
Least
fundamentally
interesting,
antisocial. He's the
but
least
you
interesting.
are Harry, aren't you?
You are Harry. Yeah,
It's
that's
the
fine.
bland central character that you can place yourself as. But like Hermione is way more interesting. Ron even is way more interesting. I think feel like Ron in the movies gets dumbed down a lot, but Ron's actually in the books is much more like vibrant and interesting. Draco is like more interesting. So I think you're right. Harry himself has to be this like placeholder character for learning about and exploring the world. And then everyone else around him can be more interesting.
And maybe it works because it's not in first person. So we're not hearing I, Harry, did X, Y, and Z. Whereas if you then think about all the books we sort of upgraded to after that, actually a lot of them did make the move for us to inhabit the Hermione-esque character.
Mm.
Adolescent fantasy, teen fiction, all of that YA, who was
Like
the
Katniss and
oh, Katniss,
like
Bella. We
Bella, yeah.
start to have the first person narrative of the slightly bookish outsider, or like the more Hermione-esque character.
Mm.
And this is unique in that I can't think of another fantasy series where I've spent 7 books in the mind of a teenage boy.
Yeah, true. Although I read more of those, what are those all those spy ones like Alex Rider and stuff. Like I read a lot of yeah, boys fiction as well when I was growing up. But and yeah, I guess there was and Philip Pullman and all that as well was a lot from
That's
that perspective.
that's true. And actually, we're speaking about this though from the progression viewpoint of female childhood readers who became female readers. I'd be really interested to see the relative mapping of a childhood boy reader of Harry Potter, and then like
Mm,
what was their reading trajectory, because it
mm,
maybe was different from ours. Um,
yeah,
you're right,
yeah.
ours went Twilight, The Hunger Games, and onwards,
Yeah, of course.
and it's almost predominantly female narrators.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas this is, yeah, a boy. Right, the first books, right, Maddie, God, how do we even like, oh, like what what do you remember being some of the like most magical things about like these first 3 books? Like where were you like, oh God, that was brilliant.
Well, the first one is the magic of the first book is the introduction, kind of as you said, of the world. Like we start in this like really banal suburban kind of household, but as you move through, like for example, first going to Diagon Alley and like learning about all these like magical shops and these magical people, and you're kind of taken on this journey that Harry's taken on, is like from normality into Diagon Alley and then onto the train and then into Hogwarts, and Hogwarts is like the ultimate destination. And as the whole of the first book basically is just kind of introducing more and more magic and more of this world. And so I think, yeah, that the locations perhaps is the thing that I'm like remembering. It's like first reading about all the knobbly streets and the weird things in the shops and the staircases that move around Hogwarts and the crazy suites. It's like, yeah, this whole different world that yeah, just created magic. That's what I remember from the first book as being the thing that draws you in.
And you're right to remember that because the structure of the first book is such that it takes so long to get to Hogwarts. I forget every time I reread it. I'm like, oh God, it's like half the book until you actually get there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's part of the enjoyment factor because she has set the book, like you said, it's just like average suburbia. It's just, and I think for this, I appreciate there's lots of American readers, but I wonder whether like Privet Drive in Surrey, where my husband's
yeah,
from, it's the same if you're not from England because it's just so perfect as
yeah.
like the place where most of us were reading this kind of literature. And then it just sort of became, oh my God, but then this guy Hagrid shows up. And then he gets this letter. And then he gets loads of letters. He gets the letters first. And there's a cat that's actually McGonagall.
It's an adventure, isn't it? It's taking you on this journey, this adventure.
I remember looking at cats on my road thinking, please be a witch or a wizard. please, please let me get a letter. Please. Just,
The yeah, the other thing apart from the like journey and the adventure and the locations that I always really loved, particularly about the first books, is that all of them are essentially structured like a mystery that they have to solve.
yes.
Like they are all, something weird is going on, some strange happening is happening, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione have to like solve the mystery to like work out what's going on and like fix the problem. And I think that's particularly true in one, two, and three more than the other one. So in the first one, obviously, it's the Philosopher's Stone, and we're trying to work out like what's going on with like the troll and with Quirrell and all this weird stuff, and they follow like Fluffy and everything, and they're following down into like and you always end with like the end of the solving of the mystery is some kind of big set piece. It's like some kind of big end of the like in the first one it's like getting down and finding all going through all the different puzzles to get down and find the Philosopher's Stone.
The
In the
mirror
second one,
is that.
it's yeah, exactly. The same. It kind of mirrored again in Chamber of Secrets. It's like the mystery is what's going on with all of the petrifications and this like crazy, weird snake language, and the end is you've got to the Chamber of Secrets and you've got to create the big snake. It's like there's always a mystery and then a big set piece at the end that you're solving. Same with Prisoner of Azkaban, where we're trying to work out what's going on with this Sirius Black character who's escaped and stuff. And then the end is, all the time turner things and going back in time and saving Buckbeak and all that stuff. It's like a follow the thread of a mystery, finishing with a big, like, bang set piece at the end, which just works really well.
You say that, but actually the big set piece is a little bit like, and we talked about this last episode, is a little bit like how in Game of Thrones, you actually have an episode 9 in every season, which is the big set piece.
The
But then,
big bit.
then you have an episode 10, which is the post-game analysis chat. And in
Mm.
Harry Potter, you have the big fight, you have the basilisk being killed, but god damn it, you're gonna end with a chat in Dumbledore's office.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Or like a bedside chat in the hospital wing with Dumbledore. There's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's always a chat with Dumbledore. And in the first 3 books, the world is made safe again. You start
Yes.
the book feeling relatively reassured, and you're going to go into the new academic year and it's going to start again. It's only from really the end of three onwards that we enter the new style of Harry Potter, which we'll talk about next episode, where the larger threat continues across the books. Um,
Yeah. Which is not to say that there isn't threat in the first three books. I actually think that some of the stuff in the first three books can be quite creepy looking back on it for like
oh,
little
for
kids.
sure. Like what
But then I
stuff?
think
What was
I
scary
think
in the
I
first
think we
three
just
books?
liked creepy things more when you're a kid than you think. Well, I, in general, all the petrifications in the second one. I think the second one with the snake and the basilisk and Ginny being like taken over and
Yep.
stuff. It's all quite dark and quite creepy. I
The
don't know. I found the
second
second one
one,
quite spooky.
I find the second one spooky. The second one I find one of the more disturbing Harry Potters. Um,
Yeah,
maybe even one of the most. Well, perhaps we'll rank these at the end. But I find the strange voices in the walls disturbing, and
yeah,
like the fact that people keep being petrified, and at one point, like, isn't nearly headless Nick petrified, or like one of the mystery is really, it feels more horror movie, um, in a very dark psychological way, and then
for
people
sure.
think it's Harry, don't they? They think he's behind it, and it feels very, very threatening. Um,
Yeah,
whereas there is something about the third one that actually feels a little bit more of a romp. Like, even though um, we have Sirius on the loose, there's all the stuff with like the Dementors and the Boggarts and the Patronuses. And I remember thinking, oh, actually, this is quite jaunty.
yeah. And the way that it's solved is through like time travel, which is really fun and like an exciting like end rather than a kind of yeah creepy kind of one like in the second
Marauders
book. But
map,
yeah.
like cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah, love the Marauders map.
Yeah, there's cool stuff in book three. I think book three maybe starts to form the bridge onwards because book three operated with a level of like artistic sophistication that I think signals where where four, five, and six and seven are really crossing into a realm of like total genius. Because like you were just referencing the time traveling, like the narrative, the plotting of book three is so clever about going back in time to see themselves, and if you change something, and it like it's almost like, who is that film director that does like the
Christopher Nolan.
movie? It really, really is. So yeah, three to me, I remember thinking, oh, this is really starting to move in a very, very, very genius direction.
Yeah, although I think it's only four that you really see that payoff. But then we'll talk about four another time because four's my favorite.
I just, as a child, just absolutely fell in love with the academic setting because I'm just
Mm.
a nerd. And I don't know if I wonder if you hated school, whether you would like these books. I'd be interested to know because I didn't hate school. I was a complete Hermione. I liked tests. Oh God, that's really lame. I liked books and I liked things like, oh, Hermione gets excited to like get her new timetable. I used to get really excited when like Harry, Ron, and Hermione would get their timetables in
Oh,
class.
I was about to say I loved getting my timetable.
So all of the academic infrastructure about like what history of magic essay Professor Binns had set them, I was really into that detail. I really wanted to know.
I think there was also stuff for people who didn't like school. Like, you know, Harry and Ron weren't that academic. They were always like cheating off of Hermione.
That annoyed me.
Um, and so I think there was plenty for people who didn't like school. And that's, I mean, it was so widely read and loved, right? It can't just have been
No.
the academic swats that loved it. It was literally everybody.
Yeah, and that's it. Maybe I was when people go through and talk about like what bits they loved. You're right. There's things like at the kind of other end of the spectrum. There's people like Fred and George who are like total anarchists,
Yeah.
who end up pretty much destroying parts of the school. Whereas, but for someone who is interested in like what teacher taught what class, or what the location was of each house's common room, like I just lapped it up. I could not get enough of this. Like,
Yeah.
you get all of those like the little books that were released for like Red Nose Day.
Yes, yes, yes. There was like they were the textbooks, weren't they? I've probably
Yeah,
got them on
Magical
my
Beasts
shelf
and
literally behind me.
Where to Find Them or something. And
Yeah,
it's
Fantastic Beasts.
Fantastic
Yeah.
Beasts, that's it. And just, yeah, the richness of this world and it being a school. Um, I just, oh God, it just makes me want to cry thinking about how much I absolutely, I'm pretty sure I was hyped up to go to secondary school because Harry Potter had made Hogwarts seem so fun.
I'm not sure that Croydon High School was that much similar to Hogwarts. We didn't exactly go to a boarding school style school with houses and turrets, and it was not the same.
Not at all. I was thoroughly let down. But no, we had a fun. But yeah, it had made me um envious of that more historical boarding school experience, which obviously we did not have. Um, people did, but I thought this book made that so yeah, desirable to a whole age group. Um, Maddie, how many of the spells did you know?
God, all of them. I mean, I feel like we should basically segue into our obsession fuel segment because
Okay.
I think this
Right.
is what we're talking about, right? Is
Yeah.
that it was all of the spells, the teachers, the creatures, the sweets, the locations, the names that were just so unique and came up with. It was like every sentence you got to like observe like or learn a little new nugget of a thing that you could latch onto and become obsessed with. Yeah, you could learn all the spells. Oh, you could like look at the maps of all of Hogwarts and of Hogsmeade and you could and Diagon Alley and all these places, all these characters. I mean, the list of teachers, even just in like the first book, was like I mean, it's a short book, but you're probably looking at least 20 different teachers' names, let alone all the students in the whole year group. Like everybody, you were able to really like obsess over everything, get the extra books, get the, wands from the magic shop. I mean, nowadays you can buy literally any piece of merchandise that you can possibly think of. And yeah, this is the fullest of full obsession fuel tanks.
No, nothing can beat it. But um, the reason that you were able to remember so many teachers, or one of the examples of obsession, is like we learned the rules of a made up game, Quidditch, a
Yes.
sports game.
We played it for my like 10th birthday. We played Quidditch.
Yep, that's such a stuff. But it's the genius of the way that the writing is, in that none of this ever feels tedious or boring. So to be able to explain to like 8 and 9 year olds how this like relatively complex sports game works, and this predates the movies, to be able to imaginatively visualize like three hoops in the air, you had to learn all the different positions, like the beaters, the seeker. You had to remember that the quaffle was the ball, but it's not the only ball. And then to have there be sequences of drama that take place within a Quidditch match. Like, can you imagine how
Mm.
difficult that would be to follow or communicate if you weren't a completely brilliant writer?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But we
Yeah.
followed it like to the letter. It was clear as day. I could see it in my mind's eye. I could see Harry like diving for the snitch.
Yeah. And we also read it on repeat. Like we were so obsessed with it that while we were waiting for the next one, we were just rereading the previous ones,
Yep, every
getting
time.
getting every single bit of that detail.
Yeah, because you had to remind yourself what had happened, but also because I just wanted to live in that world for longer. I just wasn't done. Oh God, there was the names of like every brand of broomstick. You're right. It could just go on and on.
Yeah.
We mentioned briefly the kind of sense of threat in book two, but what about specifically like more threatening? Like, let's start with Voldemort. Like, what do we think of
Mm.
Voldemort as a baddie, as the overarching Harry Potter villain?
I
The
mean, the fact that he was brought in so early in that first book is kind of wild when you think about like where it all ends up and how he becomes this like true representation of evil. It was all like sitting there in that first book. It really was. And like, we knew from the beginning that he had killed Harry's parents.
Yeah.
And we also saw him essentially come back, sort of, in the end of the first book as this like disembodied back of Quirrell's head. Um, and to kind of set that up so early, yeah, it was quite bold.
Yeah. I love the detail, and we should have used it, of him being called He Who Must Not Be Named. And to just totally understand that children would have the patience for repeatedly saying He Who Must Not Be Named. You have to read it on repeat because
Yeah.
basically nobody will use Voldemort's name apart from an increasingly brave Harry.
Yeah.
Sit through books and books of people being like, and has He Who Must Not Be Named been spotted? And like, how do you feel that He Who Must Not Be Named killed your parents?
Yeah.
But it's so many syllables. Not that Voldemort is a short word. Um, but he somehow was able to feel frightening to a child, but with there being scope in the books for more frightening micro villains,
Yes.
who could sometimes be the teachers, although actually that's really the later books. Like, okay, books one through
Well, Snape is a villain in the first books.
yep, Snape. But
Draco is a villain.
are these characters scary? They're there to sort of frustrate. They're the evil teacher or the nasty bully. But we were saying about like in book two, it's other things. Like I guess some people might have been scared of Aragog if you have a spider thing, or when Sirius is the wolf and it's not obvious that he can kind of shapeshift. Um, there are some other frightening things in those books one through three. The Dementors.
Well, yeah. So, well, this also kind of goes into our other category of the badassness. I think it's actually surprising. I think there is quite a lot of badassness in even books one to three. I think there's quite a lot of threat, as we've talked about, both from Voldemort, but also the various different threats of the three books. And there is a lot of like badassness from the trio who every time have to find a way to like fight the threat. And they always end up being the ones that they have to be the ones that save the day because that's the structure of the books. And it's very badass.
It's like the highest level of badass. Oh, we liked it. It was children fight evil and win.
Yeah.
But the complexity of how they fight evil was like, in Hermione's case, knowing the right spell or having found the right book in the library. I just loved it because I always thought that is the only way I could realistically contribute.
I do think that you actually probably associated yourself with Hermione more than I did. I don't think that even though I was academic and, a nerd at school, I was never really putting myself in Hermione's place, whereas I got the impression that you were.
Um, a lot of the time when the boys made fun of her, I got where she was coming from. Like she's
Yeah.
definitely exaggerated, and she does take things too far. Like she really doesn't need to take like the 15 classes that she signs up for. But she got excited about like what classes were on offer. Or her kind of mystery solving contribution was that she goes and like does the research. Whereas when we progress up to YA fantasy or teenage books or high fantasy, like I'd love to think that I could beat monsters, but with my excellent archery skills or my, amazing hand-to-hand combat, but it's just not true.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there was that association with Hermione.
Yeah.
But it's good that we were with Harry because maybe it'd be quite hateful to be constantly inside Hermione's head. I don't know.
But yeah, in terms of badassness, I think all three of them got to play their parts in each of those books. The three of them had a role. Harry's mostly was being the chosen one, but fine.
Yes.
Ron was sort of the lighter relief of the group, but actually, when it came to it, he was very brave and quite like he knew how things worked in the magic world, and he was able to be like almost have the more of the common sense of the three of them and like actually get stuff done in a way that like Harry was often a bit clueless and Hermione academic but didn't always know how things worked. Ron was more like, yeah, the practical common sense part of the let's fight this battle.
Yeah, yeah. And the books are just so brilliant because they bring in things that were really, really titillating to a child's brain. Like, for example, it used to be so exciting when you made a friend at school and you got to go to that friend's house. I don't know, maybe you didn't find
Mm,
this, but you got to see like what's their house like? Like what toys do they have? Like what do they have like a shed we can play in the garden? Do they have like a tree with a thing or like do they have like an attic or what have they got? And in the second book, when Harry goes to Ron's house, I remember thinking, this is brilliant. You know, when they go to the
mm,
burrow, because you, the reader,
yeah,
get
yeah.
to see what's at Ron's house. I'm like, I'm
Well, also
devastated.
because they got like busted out of Privet Drive in the car, which was great fun.
Like, what, talk of sense of threat. That was one of the most sinister things that God, book two is so sinister. I remember being so stressed when Harry wasn't allowed to go back to school.
Yes.
I really thought, I can't read these books if he doesn't go back to Hogwarts. Like, what do you mean he's not allowed to go back to school? What? And obviously he does.
He does.
But do you remember when we were reading like the sequel to Fourth Wing and we were like, wait a minute, if they don't go back to Basquiat, I'm not sure I'm interested
Yeah,
anymore.
it's not interesting. Yeah, you're totally right.
What?
These books fall under our thing of like you need a structure, you need a place, and that place is often a school or some kind of training facility.
Yeah, and for God's sake, stick to it.
Yeah, yeah, stop veering off.
No.
Which is what happens, as we say, very late in Harry Potter. Anyway, last category then will be our thermometer.
It's like a zero in books one through three. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I can't wait to
yeah.
talk about the later books, but one through three,
Not
no.
sure there's even many. Like, I mean, I think Ginny has a crush on Harry in the first couple of in the second book, but that's like the level of thermometer that there is. It's like 1 degree.
But again, that's it. It plays to the reading age. Nobody's being titillated by anything age 7 or 8. You know,
Yeah,
like it's just not, or the things that they are interested in, the things that are found to be, or that you find to be thrilling, are there in the books, like giving someone an invisibility cloak or a secret map. Or like it was even exciting to do things like, do you remember in the third book they're allowed to go into Hogsmeade
yes.
and there's the things that kids care about, like who has what pocket money, or who
Yeah.
gets what broomstick, or who gets what pet.
Yeah.
And when Hermione gets Crookshanks, again, it's unreasonable that they all hate Crookshanks. I'm just always on Hermione's side. Like, of course she gets a cat. Like,
The
of
best.
like
Best
they're the
pet.
best. Yeah, exactly. And Harry has Hedwig and all of this. That it it made sense, but there were also bits layered into the book that I realize now are the kind of things that are actually more adult themes, but that you sort of willingly engage with as a child, and it's good that they're there. So there is stuff about economics and the disparity of like Harry's really wealthy, isn't he? Because he's
Mm,
collected all that money, and
yeah.
Ron is not. Oh God, and there's the like through narrative of total and complete racism against Hermione because she gets called in.
Yeah.
Um, and so you get all of those early introductions of things like um, effectively swear words in a new context, racist words, racist slurs, and this idea of children very, very early on getting a sense of class or socioeconomic disparity, like Draco's family buy the whole Quidditch team, all of the Nimbus 2001s, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, it's like creating parallels to real issues that kids would have experienced in their lives, but slightly twisting them so that they're not so, yeah, as for example, like the mudblood thing. It's very obviously a parallel, but it's not a direct reference to like the racism that we see in our lives, but it helped kids to talk about it, I imagine.
Yeah. When you
Yeah.
finished book three, did you have it? Do you feel at that point when you were finishing book three that you were anywhere near the level of obsession that you were going to end up by the time it was like book seven?
No, but I think that book 4 was the first time that I bought the book, like literally the day or week it came out. Like it was, the copy of book 4 that I have is a, first edition, whatever, which is not uncommon, right? That was the period over which it exploded, I think, is basically 1999 going into 2000 when the 4th book came out.
That's right.
So I think we were just ramping up in 1999 for the crazy mania of 2000's Harry Potter.
And again, how timely, because I suppose we'll segue into this next time, but that is almost when you start to, for the first time, have a sense of like buying something yourself. Like when you're 7 or 8, you're being read the book at story time in class, or you're even being bought the book. But when you're 10, you're right, it was book 4 for me where I was like, I was at the bookshop.
Yeah.
We were sort of a little bit more autonomous.
Yeah.
We started to become little consumers. And the thing we wanted to consume was a massive, like 600-page book about wizards.
Absolutely.
And Maddie, has it changed?
No, it has not changed. It's still literally the same
thing I sent to your house.
Oh my God, I literally received a package in the mail. In fact, it didn't even come in the mail. It had to be left outside the front door because it was so heavy. It was like a brick. And it's the biggest book that I think I have ever owned, in fact, which is Alchemized, which is based on Manacled, the Hermione Draco fan fiction that has existed on the internet for I don't know how long now. Quite explicit fan fiction, as far as I understand, that has now been turned into like a non-Harry Potter themed actual book. And it is, I mean, I don't know how many pages it is, but it weighs 1.25 kilograms.
You know, it's actually, I had forgotten that is what I had sent you and its relevance to this very discussion, because you're right, the origins of that is Hermione fan fiction, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe this is brilliant because I have got my copy here and I intend to read it. And maybe this is a good way of, it'll be mad to do a run of Harry Potter podcasts and then go straight into Alchemized. But I feel like it has to be done.
It has to be done.
It has to be done. I'm sending it to you, and I did.
All right. Well, next time we'll start to see Harry Potter and the gang growing up a little bit as we grew up and became mega fans. I think we're going to talk about 4 and 5 next time. But also we'll talk about the films started coming out around the time of those books. So that'll be a really interesting discussion and how that changed our perspective on Harry Potter.
4 and 5. I mean, that is really where we've got to start talking tears, trauma. That was where the concept of kind of no spoilers came in. Big deaths. 4 and 5 is a different, I'm going to need a lot more wine next meeting. Yeah, can't wait to talk about that next time.
You've been listening to the Fangirl Diaries. Follow us on Instagram at Fangirl Diaries Pod.
And do share us with any of your friends that you think might enjoy the podcast, and rate or review us on Spotify or Apple Music.